Okay, so a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are all set to begin with another stimulating session on connecting the dots. First of all, we would like to thank our esteemed speakers for being a part of the panel discussion. I would like to welcome Dr. Kanupriya Manchanda, Vice President, People Infobeans, Rakesh Patel, Senior Vice President and Group Head, People and Culture, Equus Capital, Umesh Rateja, Founder, Sums Corp Solution, Pallavi Kar, Associate Director, HR, Tablespace Technologies. For years, the best intentions of even the most genuinely committed individuals and institutions fell far too short in closing the inequity gap in achieving diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workspace. Despite the shortcomings, the failures of managing diversity have yielded important lessons and actionable insights. As social norms continue to shift and our institutions begin to slowly adjust, new challenges and even greater aspiration arises. Our esteemed panelists would share their views on how organizations can accelerate DEI. HRAI welcomes you all to this session on connecting the dots. To know more about HRAI and its event, I would request all our participants
There's a lot of disturbance, I guess.
to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all our participants' feedback. We'll be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all the participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our moderator for the session, and thereafter she would be taking the entire session ahead. Ms. Pallavi Kar, Associate Director HR, Tablespace Technologies. Pallavi is the Associate Director HR at Tablespace Technologies. She has been working as a transformation and change agent in the field of talent management and organizational development since the past 16 years. She has been conferred with the prestigious award of Emerging HR Leaders League Top 40 Under 40 by the Economic Times Group and Women Inspiration Award 2022 for Emerging Women Leader in Corporate by Eventbox. Pallavi is a certified master trainer for training L&D professionals and leaders. She is also a ACC ICF, that is International Coaching Federation certified NLP coach. She is passionate about helping individuals and teams identify what they want to aspire for in their lives and careers and support them by facilitating, empowering them to reach their goals. Without taking much time, I will now hand over the platform to Ms. Pallavi to take this discussion ahead. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much, Peterson, for the lovely introduction, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for investing your time with us today on this beautiful, bright Thursday afternoon. My name is Pallavi, and I'm the Associate Director HR for Tablespace Technologies. It is one of the top corporate real estate organizations in India today. Today, we have an amazing panel of highly eminent HR leaders with us who will be sharing their points, their thoughts, and their inputs on this very critical and a very relevant business topic that most businesses face today: accelerating DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, in the complex, dynamic, and diverse world that we live in today, the more interconnected we seem to get, the more polarized or segmented our communities have seemed to become. Now, it's a very standard HR policy for all of us to state that we are an equal opportunity employer. We believe in diversity and believe in creating inclusive cultures. Now, while these buzzwords are casually used in daily corporate lingo, actively incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace is crucial for enterprises to succeed more than ever, even now. Now, in the words of Varna Myers, who's a cultural change and a thought leader and a DEI educator, diversity is being asked to come to a party, whereas inclusion is being asked to dance. So in times like this, organizations can actually no longer afford to only showcase inclusivity statements, but rather implement a culture where DEI is a very part of its fabric. Leaders need to live it, build diverse workplaces, create equal opportunities, and inclusive work cultures. In fact, as per a report of McKinsey, companies with more inclusive business cultures and policies see a 59% increase in innovation, and 62.6% are more likely to see profitability and productivity. So what are these buzzwords? So if I look at diversity, it is basically defined as the presence of differences within a given setting. This includes gender, identity, race, ethnicity, religion, nationality, communities, sexual orientation, etc., etc. An organization creates a diverse workforce by recruiting employees from various social and cultural backgrounds. This ensures that varied voices, experiences, and opinions contribute to building the company. Contrary to that, inclusion actually refers to the intentional and ongoing effort to ensure that people with different identities can fully participate in all aspects of the organization, including leadership positions and decision making. Equity refers to the approach that everyone ensures that everybody has access to the same opportunities. It recognizes that advantages and barriers exist, and that as a result, everyone does not start from the same place. Equity is a process that begins by acknowledging that unequal starting place and grows to work and correct the imbalance. Equity ensures that all people have the opportunity to grow, contribute, and develop, regardless of their identity. So we have a very, very exciting discussion ahead of us today. And before we dive deep into the discussion and the panel introduction, I want to take a quick temperature check of the room. Now, how many of you in the audience today are facing challenges with implementing DEI initiatives in your teams and organizations? I'll request the HRIA team to quickly put the poll question on the board. I just want to take a quick, yes, thank you so much. The poll question is already on the board. Are you facing challenges with implementation of DEI initiatives in your teams and organizations? And great, we are already seeing responses. Okay, now while the responses are still coming in, the idea is that whatever your role is, in the organization today, whether you are in the HR or you're a business leader, or you are an employee who's looking forward to accelerating DEI in your workspace, that you come away today with something, a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy that you can apply to be more successful. So I think the results are already out and I'm not able to see them though. Can the HRIA team share the results, please?
So it's still coming in. I
All
see
right.
the participants are still sharing their answers and responses.
Great.
I see a 56% coming on yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's finally done. So 56% say yes and 44 say no.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very interesting combination or a mix of people that we have in the audience today. All right. So what we'll do is I'm going to give you a format of what to expect in today's discussion. I'll take the next few moments and introduce each of the panelists to you and briefly tell you a little bit about their background, their industries, and so on. I'll be kicking off the conversation and asking them questions that draw some of the high-level themes that we should be thinking about or talking about. And then towards the second half of the discussion today, we'll open the floor to give all of you an opportunity to ask any specific questions that you have been thinking about that could help you, plan or navigate your entire practice as a DEI expert. Sounds good? Great. Let's get started with the panel introductions. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Rakesh Patel. Rakesh is a human resources leader with strong business acumen. He has over 2 decades of experience working across diverse industries. Currently, the SVP and Global Group Head at Equus Capital, he has worked very closely with leadership teams in successfully driving the people agenda across people development, coaching, strategic planning, and business process improvisation. An inborn trainer, facilitator, counselor, and coach, he is a perfect blend of sales and human behavioral proficiencies and has managed end-to-end training, organizational development, and engagement effectively. He has profound experience in establishing an organization's value system and people management competence. Beyond professional life, Rakesh is an avid reader, a canvas painter, and enjoys cooking new recipes. Welcome to the discussion, Rakesh.
Thank you very much, Pallavi, for your nice words.
Thank you. Our next panelist for today is Mr. Umesh Rateja. Umesh comes with over 28 years of experience in strategic and operational areas with large and reputed Indian and MNC. He has extensive experience of managing highly dynamic people-centric sectors like technology, telecom, and insurance. Umesh is the co-founder and director of the Next Milestone Technologies Private Limited, Sons Corp Solutions LLP, independent director on the board of Dev IT Limited, Honorable Secretary of Gujarat IT Association, GESIA, and advisor to the board of Equus Group of Companies. Umesh is an alumnus from SIBM, that is Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune. He also likes to spend his time mentoring startups and management students at various B schools. To unwind, he likes to cook, read, and go on solo drive. Welcome to the discussion, Umesh.
Thank you, Pallavi. Look forward to an engaging discussion today.
Wonderful. I'm excited as well. The last but not the least, our last panelist member for today is Dr. Kanupriya Manchanda. Kanupriya is a self-directed and motivational professional with over 17 years of diverse human resources experience and is a subject matter expert in talent management, employee engagement, employer branding, change and culture management. Dr. Kanupriya is currently the VP HR at Infobeam and has grown her team from 80 to 1400 plus in her journey. She believes HR is all about building hearty relations, and she specializes in weaving the cultural fabric in the organization. Kanupriya believes that an organization can grow only if its people grow. And as HR, our primary role is to nurture the talent and to ensure the right soul is in the right seat. Kanupriya has recently been awarded with the People First Leader Award 2022, Women of Substance by INMO, Women Achievers in MP, IT, ITES industry at NASSCOM, and many others. Kanupriya completed her doctorate in employee engagement in the year 2020. She has done her MBA from Swinburne University, Melbourne. But Kanupriya is a hardcore Indori and loves to have poha and jalebi for breakfast 365 days a year. Welcome to the discussion, Kanupriya.
Thank you so much, Neha, and lovely smiling faces on a Thursday afternoon. So look forward for great conversations ahead.
Wonderful. Great. So now that we have our panelists all ready, and let's just quickly kickstart off our discussion. And the first question that I have is for Mr. Umesh Rateja. Umesh, DEI is a burning topic or a very relevant topic that most organizations are talking about nowadays. It's not a new topic, but everybody is talking about it. How has DEI impacted your organization?
Right. I think I'll address it in different parts because one, DEI is one of the most spoken topics at most of the HR conferences, and while it is being discussed across the globe, I think it's not a new topic, so to say, because till about a couple of years back, we used to use the word like Pallavi mentioned in her initial, setting the context, that we used to speak about an equal opportunity employer, and hence the topic has been spoken about. It would be unfair on me to say it's old wine in new bottle, so to say, but I think there's a lot of meat which has got added into the subject, and diversity today, till about 2 decades back, when we spoke about diversity, we only referred to how gender neutral we are, how open we are to people with special abilities. But if you really look at it now, it's really encompassed multiple aspects. It's not just limited to gender or physical abilities. It's now we're talking about ethnicity, we're talking about religious background, we're talking about sexual orientation, and multiple aspects which has actually got covered, and hence that makes the topic very relevant. And it's not a topic which is just spoken about, and there's a lot of action happening on the ground, and different organizations trying to do it to match their own organizational strategies. Because at the end of the day, I think while we talk about D&I, we are also talking about what does my business need? How can I fulfill my business objective while covering some of these aspects? Because let's not forget that the objective why organizations exist is purely for business purpose. And hence, how can we make these things relevant is the aspect. Typically, one needs to understand diversity is a thinking. Okay, that's a thought process which we need to bring in. While diversity and inclusion are both used interchangeably, very conveniently by most people, very loosely, spoken about at times. But I think inclusion is more of the type of decision making which we want to do. So one is an intent, the other is an action, so to say. And that's why we say that diversity hence focuses on what my workplace, is made up of. So hence it's a thinking, and we need to objectively work towards bringing in those changes that we talked about. While we do that, I think the question which you also asked was, how has it impacted my organization? I'll put it in, since I'm in consulting these days, I'll try and bring in examples of my experiences of not just my own organization, but my organizations where I have worked in the past. So I'll use some very specific examples for the benefit of our participants, that what we are actually doing in most of the organizations without even realizing that these are actually, parts of the inclusion which we are bringing in. For example, today, if you look at, we have a holiday list. Okay, in every organization, we have a holiday list, which typically has certain mandatory holidays and certain optional holidays. And typically those optional holidays are regional in nature or specific religion related. Okay, and that's a perfect example where organizations today are making themselves inclusive. And we don't even realize that that's an initiative towards inclusion that we are doing. Another example I would say is in Gujarat specifically, the most celebrated day is typically Makar Sankranti, 14 January. Now, if you actually see, 14 January is not just celebrated in Gujarat, it is celebrated across the country. Different states have different, they call it with different names. In Gujarat, they call it Uttarayan. In North, they call it Makar Sankranti or Lodi. Or in Tamil Nadu, we call it Pongal. We call Posh Parkod in West Bengal. So again, if you see, there is a fair amount of inclusion. And what we were able to do while I was in my corporate roles, we used to celebrate as a part of engagement activities, we used to celebrate and bring in the regional aspects into the space, so that each team has an opportunity to celebrate it together, whereby there's a cross learning, there's a cross understanding of different cultures. That's how you bring in. It is a significantly culture building activity. Typically, if you look at it from an inclusion point, another example, I'll say that when I used to do telecom, we used to have very clearly mandated roles saying, oh, for this role, we need a diversity candidate. And, we would go on hiring. And some of those roles, we identified that bringing in diversity candidates actually helped. For example, if I have a diversity candidate in my sales team, and if it's a high pressure sales role, suddenly you will find that the morning con calls, the language of the call was very different. And we had extremely positive way of, managers and leaders not using the unparliamentary language, which is so common in sales, while it is not desired, but we still find that happening. But I think that was a positive way of, we bringing in and saying, okay, these diversity candidates are actually making a difference, in working. Another thing which worked very well for us was from a diversity and inclusion point, where whenever we were making opening up new markets, we were trying to hire people from that region itself. Or if we had people working from those areas or states, we would give, IJPs, internal job postings, and give them preference to apply and move back. So it was like a ghar wapsi or a son of soil kind of a element which we were trying to bring in. And we realized we didn't do it under the garb of D&I. It was more of logically this made a lot of sense for business. And hence we implemented. So I think what has helped me implement D&I in my own way in different organizations is trying to look at what is going to make sense, what is relevant to business, and is it impactful? Is it making a difference to the entire ecosystem of within the organization and the industry at large? So suffice to say, I think I would want to rest my point. I can go on this. But I think these are some of the areas which helped me, implement some of these D&I initiatives in the organization.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Umesh, for taking the time and sharing some of the very interesting initiatives or inputs that consciously or unconsciously organizations have taken to ensure that people feel included. I think those are some very critical points that we as HR practitioners can take back and try to implement in our organizations as well. Thank you. My next question is to Rakesh. Rakesh, what are some of the successful initiatives or best practices that your organization has identified concerning diversity and inclusion issues?
Okay. So let me, share this with my experience, which I've had. See, the first realization that we made in the organization is that we are based in India, more specifically in Gujarat, and that the nature of our business, however, is very global. So we understood as to what the business problems are we wanting to solve. And this business-led approach enabled us to take good actions on inclusion, whether with respect to creating environment and striving to create actions where people, feel welcomed, valued, respected, heard, so on and so forth. So to share a few initiatives, and these initiatives actually became pretty much easier for us to implement because business approach, it enabled us to, launch or, take on the initiatives and drive them very smoothly. So the one of them was, when we were drafting our JDs, we had ensured that all our JDs essentially are skill-based, and every evaluation that we do, whether it is for hiring or for the internal job, posting assessments or the promotions, they were all skill-based and behavioral in nature. So this enabled us.
I think we lost Rakesh, Pallavi.
Yeah, I guess so. We'll just wait for 30 more seconds, maybe. All right. I think while Rakesh is trying to get back to the network, what we'll do is we will, maybe one of the other panelists can take up the question and answer that question until Rakesh joins us. Anupriya, Umesh.
Sure. Sure. So I think probably while it is coming to what are these strategies that we have been utilizing it. So at Infobeans, we've again, honestly, I had a wider playground. We recently in the last 3 years acquired 2 companies. So actually got a lot of diversity by virtue of the acquisitions coming in the organization. But we pretty much followed the 3-prong approach here. First was the establishing the concept of diversity across the entire organization. Diversity is much beyond than the identification factors like age, gender, religion, culture, background, right? More than that, you actually need to understand people with different cognitive abilities, different personality traits, different individual preferences. Nowadays, like it is like whether you like a pet or not, or do you have a tattoo on your body or not, or you like to swim or not, is what millennials talk about when they talk about diversity, right? So keeping that as a context, and we tried to get that thing established. To seep it down, we followed a top-down approach because it's always that the leaders need to walk the talk first. So a lot of reinforcement was done among our leadership teams. However, the rewards of implementing D&I was bottoms up. So it was actually the leaders driving it down through the reinforcement and the members who are actually implementing it on demo. Because whatever, if you want, the more you reward that kind of a behavior, that is where it gets absorbed in. So we redesigned our R&R framework. So the three major steps that we did consciously to implement DI was, first was redesigning our rewards and recognition and policy framework. We were talking about diversity and inclusion, but everywhere our policy said she/he, right? We were not nowhere counting in the third gender in place. Our forms did not have the option, while we were actually capturing the first information from the candidate. And those were realizations where we actually formed a committee and they came out, yeah, we are saying this, but this is not there in our own system. But to be very honest, it was not intended to be like that, but something which came in by virtue, purely negligence is what it comes as a perspective. So that helped us out we started rewarding diversity initiatives in our quarterly awards as a mechanism. The third, the area where we focused out was in celebrating the, like Rakesh was talking about, the hiring side of it. We realized like the job descriptions, everything's were made aligned, but there were a lot of unconscious bias that the panels were reposing in when they were hiring. So for instance, when we were hiring for a support role, by default, a subtle message goes to the recruiter that I'll prefer only male candidates. And it is coming to a night support role. Or if you're looking out at a sales role, I'll prefer a white skin to go ahead and do that. So, and that is when we realized it is nowhere in the job description, but that is where the unconscious bias are actually eliminating the candidates and impacting the screening. So we kind of did extensive training for our talent acquisition team to identify those unconscious biases. And honestly, rather than sending an email, we had those conversations to actually speak with them, to speak with the panelists, coach them and mentor them, ask them. Some cases were genuine. They were facing difficulties with those scenarios in their team. And we tried, okay, let us reinforce these two more checks in the interview process. If we align a similar candidate, we will make sure that these things are taken care of, and then the candidate comes in. So that's where a win-win could be established. And I think third element is on the celebration side. So we've always seen celebrating Women's Day, right, in the organization, but we actually celebrated Men's Day at the organization. So that is where it was like, wow. And we always, it's like men's coming and giving, writing a note for the women. But if you actually see reverse and doing reverse activities. So Women's Day, we had an arm wrestling competition. We had a push-up competition. So I think it's kind of breaking the stereotypes. So that is something which has helped us across onto it.
Thanks, Kanupriya, for sharing those very interesting thought processes. I think absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, why do we need to only have a Women's Day? Why not a Men's Day, or why not a third gender day? Like, why can we not have more inclusive language in the organization? So I think those are some great points that you brought across. I think Mr. Rakesh is back now. Rakesh, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, the bandwidth here surprisingly is a little lower. So I'm not sure. On occasions, I'm missing out on hearing you as well. And
okay. Are you able to hear us now?
This time I'd completely lost my connection. Oops. So my apologies.
No worries. Technology being what it is.
I can't hear anything.
So, Rakesh, can you hear me?
I can't hear anything.
Rakesh, you may want to turn off your video and see maybe.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do that. I'll do that.
Yeah, Rakesh, is it better now?
It is, but it is still showing your network bandwidth is low. So I think we can
Okay.
continue. Let's see,
Okay.
because for the paucity, for the betterment of the time of all the other participants.
Sure. So, Rakesh, you were talking about some of the DEI initiatives in your organization. Would you like to continue on with the answer?
So if I were to, add on to a few things, I'm not sure what Kanupriya would have, already shared from her experience. So a few of the other, initiatives which we typically have is on the hiring side, we created kind of an auto diversity by virtue of, creating or keeping a watch on the demographics. So that is something which we have as a 6-monthly affair to ensure that we are able to keep a watch on demographics, organization-wide, location-wide, function-wide. So that enables us to let us know that whether there is some kind of a distortion which is happening or not. Thirdly, in terms of, since we are geographically spread across, every region, right, in our organization has a different set of holidays. So depending on the regional choices, people can exercise that. And over and above that, from a corporate perspective, the way we have devised the leave policy, it has a significant amount of optional holidays which we create. So which are specifically created for every festival, for every community, so to say. So they can pick and choose apart from some of the fixed, holidays. Also importantly, I would make a mention here that one festival, which we celebrate, and I'll call it as a festival, right? Because that is the way we celebrate, that is Women's Day. So while we may say, we might have missed on many of them on occasions, right? But this is one which we never miss out on, where we end up, publicizing a few stories as well, because they are pretty inspiring, right, for the people across, and not just from the female fraternity perspective, but also from the other side. So that helps a lot in terms of creating the kind of a vibe which we want to have. And nevertheless, on a personal side, if I were to look at, I live in a family which is surrounded by women, right? So it's like that's one particular aspect which has always been pretty close. I'll share a few more initiatives which we have. So, from physical disability, right? There are few people in our organization who have a physical disability. In fact, for them, one thing which we have very exclusively done is the parking space, which is very limited here nowadays. So irrespective of the level, but these people definitely have a parking space right from the day one to ensure that the discomfort, does not come into them. In fact, some of the vice presidents have missed out on the parking space because of the same reason. But I think that's a choice which the organization exercises, and everybody is happy with the same. And at present, if you look at, we deliberately hire from different parts of the country, not just from a diversity benefits perspective, but it is also a business choice. We have realized very clearly that the kind of thinking minds that you get from either the eastern part of the country or the southern part of the country actually has started helping the kind of a developmental journey which we are building in the organization. And last but not the least, we have also realized one thing of late, that focusing on equity actually builds a solid focus on inclusion and diversity. However, alone equity norms without meritocracy again has quite a number of negative repercussions. And that's where the challenges essentially come up. So we had introduced a very, very fair, transparent, and a very well communicated talent assessment methodology. and integrated the same with every possible opportunity that is available to the employees. This has started helping and we are getting the vibes of it. However, some broader results are something which we'll see in the times to come. So these are some aspects, on which we have been, building on as far as the diversity, equity, and inclusion issues are concerned.
Thank you so much, Rakesh, for sharing your detailed thoughts on, how this can be implemented. I think, as you rightly pointed out, equity is a very, very critical point, and somewhere in terms of thinking only from a diversity point of view, we somewhere lose the sight of ensuring that equity and inclusion are equally important, and that's where most organizations are facing challenges in terms of implementing it today. My next question is to Dr. Kanupriya. Dr. Kanupriya, how do you think that DEI can be a priority for organizations that have other big issues to deal with?
Yes, Pallavi. So I think very true. Many a time when you actually are wondering on hiring challenges or retention challenges, probably focusing management energies on D&I, no doubt about it that it falls down the priority order. But as organizations, as diverse teams, and I think that's where the people function actually plays a very important role to keep it on a priority segment. And unless you actually weave it as a part of your cultural fabric, if you probably hire somebody as, okay, he is my D&I specialist, he's going to work on D&I, that model does not really work. It has to be your HR business partners doing it on the ground every single day, your leadership team. And again, honestly, even just the people function would not be enough. It has to be bifurcated down to the leadership team, where they actually go and talk about how it needs to be taken forward ahead. Because in D&I, the most sensitive part is about the inclusion. I think organizations are sensitive enough, like making sure they are open, they are not biased, these diverse Bs are happening is element. But once the person is in the system, do they really feel that they are a part of the system? So that element, I think, is something where we actually really are looking forward that they are focusing on and implementing. For instance, like if you are asking individuals sexual preferences, or you are, do they feel welcomed about, or is it something that they become the talk of the water cooler conversations within the organization, which makes them, if you are open for third gender, do you really have the washroom facilities available which make them comfortable around it? So making sure that you as HR leaders are also walking the talk and humanizing the experience that you are actually creating, not just putting it in on your policies or words or docs down there, but living it across. I think it's something which is very important and which will actually embrace the concept within the organization.
I agree, Dr. Kanupriya. I think that's a very important thing that you put it across, because it's not only about just putting it out as a policy, but I think it's also about accepting it as a mindset change, accepting it as an organizational wide initiative. It's not just a HR initiative. It should not be just a HR initiative, right? I think that's where we are coming from. Yeah, absolutely, we completely agree with you. I think it's time for a small poll from the audience right now. I think we have been talking enough. We have been talking a lot about different DEI initiatives that have been happening across some of the organizations across. I would like to ask a quick question to all the audience members, and I'll request the HRAI team to put the poll question on the screen here. Thank you so much. So what are some of the DEI initiatives that have successfully been implemented and worked out in your organization? What's the one most successful DEI initiative that has worked best in your organization? Is it embedding DEI into the company core values? Is it celebrating diverse holidays and events? We are already getting responses. Is it establishing mentorship program for underrepresented groups? Is it building a diverse leadership team? Use of inclusive language, or hiring for diversity? Okay, So while the poll answers are coming in, I think what we'll do is we'll quickly go ahead and ask the next question to our next panelist. And probably I'll request the team AI to share the answers or the poll results once the poll is done. Okay. So the next question that I have is for Mr. Umesh. Umesh, how do you think that, we are talking about diversity and equity and inclusion, but how do we ensure that we include or involve these employees, especially from the underrepresented populations, so that they don't feel tokenized or they do not feel left out?
I think there are a couple of things, and as you people rightly mentioned, that DI is something which should not just be a lip service of the management, or it should not be something for our, investor decks, or it's a part of our, annual report which gets published to shareholders. I think what it needs is more of an impactful, implementation, and really show the benefits it's having on the overall culture of the organization. And as I have always said, that one is an intent, the other is an action. And how do we really action it? While if we start tokenizing, some of the initiatives which you are doing, then there is a paradox to it, because every coin has two sides. The moment you start having special privileges for building an inclusive culture, suddenly people will start having a feeling of that someone else is getting a preferential treatment. And that's definitely not the desire with which the organization initiated the initiative, and along with it, the employee who got covered under that from the diverse background is someone who will never feel included in the true sense. They'll always feel as if they've been, left out. I think it's, while the intentions and goals are pretty noble when defining it, I think somewhere in implementation, it's extremely important that the leadership as well as the managers start walking the talk. They are the ones, their actions should start demonstrating inclusion in their day-to-day behavior. It's very easy to say that we should have an inclusive leadership style, but it's easier said than done. I think some of the things which typically organizations, whether they believe in DI or not, one very significant aspect which they need to remember is today's managers are dealing with 6 different brackets of employees. So typically they would be people from Gen X, millennials, as well as Gen Z, and most of baby boomers would be the managers. They all have very different drivers. They have very unique expectations. So hence managing these people, I think there is a significant amount of mentoring, coaching, which needs to be done for these managers in terms of really managing this set of employees, whether they are from different segments or they are from any diverse backgrounds. I think in India, as a country which has a significant demographic dividend, I think each organization is suffering from an inclusiveness, because our managers have a very different way of managing things. And when you have a demographic dividend, you have different sets of thought processes, you have different sets of people, you have different people definitely coming from different backgrounds, which, so to say, fall under the definitions of diversity. And I think that is where tokenizing definitely would not help. It has to be a cultural change. It has to be a change which every employee feels that I'm valued for what I bring to the table. The employees need to be valued for their, views which they are able to present openly and in a transparent way, in a very, very unthreatening manner, that tomorrow I'm valued for who I am and what I bring to the table, rather than the group I represent. I think that's something which very typically would really help. Otherwise, we would, the entire noble intent with which the inclusion has been created for diverse background people would not happen. I'll just quote another significant group which nobody is talking about. That is the neurodiverse conditions which people, 1 out of every 5 people, one of the most common neurodiverse backgrounds is dyslexic people. 1 out of 5 people are told to be dyslexic. And almost 80% millionaires in the world are, certified dyslexic guys. So I think organizations today need to take cognizance of dyslexity and try and understand whether these people who are suffering from any neurodiverse backgrounds or conditions are able to be put in jobs which are ideal for them, in which they can thrive. Not that they make poor managers, but I think that's another group which today lot is being spoken about and getting done. And I think today, because there's a stigma attached, like any other diversity, nobody is speaking about dyslexic. Even if I know if I'm dyslexic, I'll not come out and tell I am dyslexic. So there's a stigma attached to it. I think tokenizing definitely would not help. And if we need to build a total purely thriving culture which thrives on inclusivity, I think the culture has to be that I can be in a position to talk openly. That they are my 2 cents on tokenizing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Umesh. And as you rightly said, culture, I think, is a very, very top-down approach. I mean, unless and until it trickles down from the leadership, where the leader is somebody who's living and showcasing the values, it is very difficult for people at other levels to be able to not only accept diversity, but also ensure that people are included. I'll also link it back to what Dr. Kanupriya said a while back. It's not only that it has to come from top down, but the results are actually shown from the bottom. That's where we start seeing the results. And I think that's a very, very beautiful point that you have put it across in terms of people who are suffering from dyslexia also. Like, how can we look at not only diversity as a gender or a race or ethnicity specific thing, but also from other points of view. Thank you so much. I think my next question will be to Mr. Rakesh. Rakesh, my question for you is, most progressive organizations who are focusing on inclusion and diversity today are now looking at employees being a culture add versus culture fit. What are your thoughts on this?
This has been a very, very progressive debate. The way I look at it is a little different. When the culture norms are traditional and are not compliant with the new generation, then culture add is a desirable change. But on the very same time, we might face a stiff resistance to the moment we start talking about culture add. So, however, on the other side, if the norms and the belief system in the organization are progressive in nature, here I am also referring to the thought process that leadership actually brings onto the table. So if they are progressive, flexible, and are complying more or less with the so-called millennials and the Gen Z, right, which Umesh Bhai was referring to, then culture fit would be a very natural process, right, and would be helping as well. Needless to say that in all probabilities, there would be a coexistence of all these generations in an organization. And it is also highly desirable because they add value in different terms. Enabling the identity maintenance coupled with structured work processes and systems would ensure that we are able to build a robust culture. Such realization or the awareness or sensitization and even acceptance both from the organization and environmental perspective is very critical. And it is only then that we'll perhaps be able to create a more inclusive culture And then and only then do I see this debate actually dying to its own death. So that's my perspective.
And I think that's a very good way of putting it across. I think as HR professionals, we'll have to figure out which elements of culture add do we want to add and which elements of culture fit do we need to retain. Whatever
Correct.
is new does not necessarily mean it's great, and whatever is old does not necessarily mean it's bad. So we'll have
Correct.
to figure out the ideal balance. And I think that's a very interesting way of putting it across. And I am agreeing with you on this. I hope the poll answers are out as of now. Can I request the Team HR Association of India to share the poll results with us? What are some of the DEI initiatives that other organizations have been taking, which is the most successful one as of now? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think the second option, that was celebrating diverse holidays and events, is the one which has come up with a very high 62% of voting. And it was followed, not closely, but it is followed by the next option, which is building a diverse leadership team, which is 23%. And yeah, I think about embedding DEI into company core values comes to about 8%, and mentorship program for underrepresented and inclusive language comes to about 4%. Thank you so much. I think those results also kind of identify and embody what we have been talking about. Consciously or unconsciously, as organizations, we are moving towards that particular effect. So I'll ask my next question to Dr. Kanupriya. Dr. Kanupriya, now that we have been talking about DEI for quite some time, and it is taken as a serious business initiative, it is no longer just a HR initiative. And organizations are using this as a serious employee engagement and retention tool, and thus improving their profitability. What are your thoughts on this? How do you think DEI can help?
True. So I think although HR always hates to convert everything into either a top line or a bottom line, HR is all about emotions and relations. But I think being a part of the business leadership team is something we always bring value on. And I think measuring your diversity inclusive index actually helps you to take it to bring tangible value of the initiatives that you are putting in across. I think the recent Gartner study itself says that the team member performance actually improves 12 times if you actually have a more inclusive workplace. The recent, whether it was I was reading it last night, the Glassdoor report, which is talking about the top high trends of cultural values that it brings in. Diversity, equity, inclusion is kind of among the top 9, which actually is kinding up. Honestly, 2 years ago, this was nowhere in the radar. This was not in a part of the talk of the town. So when it comes to engagement, if your team, especially I would say, compensation act as an engagement and retention tool for the first 5-7 years of the career. People live up to that. Beyond that, compensation becomes a hygiene factor. With the kind of people that you work together closely with, the kind of opportunities that you have to grow, the kind of opportunities that you get to learn. And from a diversity team perspective, I think nowadays diversity people have, like, whether you're working from office or you're working from home, right? Or you are what proximity bias that you have within the leadership are various factors that it comes into picture. So obviously, I think diversity and inclusion both. And I think diversity is like having a raw ingredient. Inclusion is making the dish out of those ingredients out here. And this brings a lot of value add. And as organizations and many leadership teams are considering it as a part of the top agenda. It is not something that would fall down the cracks and impacting both the top line as well as the growth. Within our own organization, an example I would like to quote it here is where our top leadership team, we made a conscious effort not to just have people with different, like the gender, the origin, the cultural backgrounds that come is definitely their preference. We actually tried to bring in a diversity of bringing in what are the hobbies that they follow. Right. So again, when I tabled up the idea, it was like you're getting too personal into that individual. But trust me, the true character of an individual is spaced out of what they do and what they love to do it as a passion. So if you actually have a lot of people in the leadership team who all have love only for cricket as a background, and you form that as a group, it is a common element, but it blocks the thought process in a particular direction. So a little loud idea on the table, but I think it gave out good results to us. So I would encourage all HR leaders here to give it a try and share your experiences around.
I think very important point, just adding here, Kanupriya, is I think monitoring such things, not just creating it, but monitoring it is something which, and I always say that HR, because it always thinks from the heart, at times I've found that HR to be extremely poor in numbers. I think we need to get a little more in terms of analytics. And I think these are analytics which will throw out various, insights which we can leverage to bring in creating a winning organization, a winning culture, so to say, because all of it eventually has to boil down to how we are impacting the clear bottom line. Definitely, we have very little to contribute to the top line, but definitely to the bottom line. If we are able to create retention, if we are able to create a good culture, I think we are home.
Absolutely. And I so well relate. You can improve only an element that you start measuring. Else, it's all subjective in nature, right?
Correct.
The way we, all of us, wear
In
a
fact,
band is only to make sure we
add on
measure
to this a little bit, right? Because we have been talking, whenever we talk about DA initiative, because we don't find a buy-in, and we are not able to establish as to what is actually going to add value to the business. So the measurement which we do
I think we've lost Mr. Rakesh's voice.
Yeah, I'm back again. I'm so sorry because connection here is pretty poor. So not sure where we lost, but the only thing which I wanted to make sure was it is the measurement which can actually enable, and if we are able to present that to the leadership and show that how is it adding value, organization which we normally look at, there are some people who perhaps would be clocking more hours and some people would be clocking less hours, and that may be by choice also on occasions. But if we are able to bring out that data, right, then perhaps the managers or management also would realize at the very same time that where is it creating a disparity, right, and where is the inclusiveness getting missed out, and how is that adversely affecting the organization. So typically these measurements can actually throw a lot of insights and can enable the organization to actually create a buy-in and build on these initiatives.
Completely agree with all of you. I think DEI is here and DEI is here to stay. It's the way forward. So, okay. I think what we'll do is I can see some comments from the audience already. Let's just open the floor to the audience and have questions from all of them. Can I request the audience to...
Yeah, so before we move into the Q&A session, we'll be running a poll to have our participants' valuable feedback captured on this session. So would request to share your feedback on our today's session. And while you all are doing so, would request all our participants to kindly put their questions, regarding our today's session on the chat box, so that Pallavi can have them routed to the respective panel members.
Yeah, you can choose to address your questions to any specific panelist, or you can put it as open to all. In that case, any of the panelists can take up whatever they want to take up. Thank you, Asha, for your comment. Asha says that I quite agree that D&I should not be in terms of gender or cognitive abilities, but in terms of interest, multidisciplinary approaches, values, hobbies. All these things bring value and richness to the organization. I think that's a very, very good thought process, Asha. Thank you for sharing it across.
We have a very lovely audience. The feedback is coming too good for you, Peter. Or they've been too generous, I would say.
Yes, I think everything's yes, 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 yes. Great. Okay. Any questions for any of our esteemed panel members that you would like to put in here? Okay, Karan has a question. What are the long-term consequences if you ignore or fail to recognize DEI at work?
Can I take that?
Yeah, any of the panel members can please take it up.
Okay, Karan, in my opinion, it's not that we are ignoring it. No organization can ignore it. Because as I mentioned, there are some elements which are unconsciously going to be there, where you're going to be bringing in diversity in your own way. And but yes, if you consciously work towards it, you can have a far-reaching effect, and you could be touching on various segments of the society at large, and that would not only help you present yourself as a great employer. You could also actually build in an excellent employee value proposition, because you'll suddenly realize there are certain specific diversity areas which you're working on, and they are giving you good results. So being conscious about what is working, and that's where the element of data and analytics comes in. Till such time you're not going to be consciously measuring some of those trends, you'll not really figure out what seems to be working for you.
Just to add, Karan, one line.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
Dr. Kanupriya, please go ahead.
Yeah, so to add on to one line, the long-term consequences are as probably you would be left behind the race. You're left with people who are working with you only for a paycheck and nothing else. So that motivates it.
I'll just give a simple example from one of the experiences that I had in my previous organization. When we used to hire for, the particular function in research and development, the person happened to come from a specific community. And all the hirings that used to happen in that function used to happen, through references. So typically there was a mass gathering of that particular community which had happened in that function alone. Nowhere in the organization, in any other function, the community was, evidently there. That started creating such a kind of a chaos from a cultural perspective, because they used to act and operate absolutely in isolation, very differently from others, which was creating a huge business impact. Now, if at a leadership level, if you are not able to observe or keep a check on these aspects, whether from a diversity or an inclusion perspective, this example itself can tell you what kind of detrimental impact, right, it can have, in the overall scheme of affairs the organization is dealing with.
Thank you. Thank you for answering it. The next question is from Pooja. How D&I initiatives have influenced you as a leader on bringing about a change? The question anyone can answer. Yes, please, Kanupriya, go ahead.
Yeah, so Pooja, probably as a leader, as an individual on bringing a change, the biggest change that I see was within my own self. The moment I started actually following and implementing it across, I actually became aware of my own biases. I started seeing a lot of value add bringing in comes to broadening the horizon. The moment we started valuing, our Chennai team started growing in, and I realized I put it a happy Diwali message to everyone, but I did not put a happy Pongal message to everyone. And like there was during a one-on-one conversation, a team member said it, ma'am, you did not wish it on us on our own festival, and then you realize it, oh my God, this was not something which was important to me, but for the team that I am managing, it is something very important. And I was ignoring that as a fact. So broadening my own horizons, it has helped me across an ability to see things from a different perspective. I see I am becoming a better decision maker when I am surrounded by a team which is more diverse and more inclusive.
Agree. I think DEI as a entire initiative or entire concept helps us actually introspect our own unconscious biases, as you rightly said. I think there's a comment by Shalini for everyone. Shalini says that DEI helps to tap people potential. At the same time, it will increase the job satisfaction, bring higher levels of trust, and keep employees engaged and motivated. Absolutely bang on, Shalini. Thank you for sharing that input with all of us.
And I think
Great.
sensitivity, I think it brings in a significant amount of sensitivity towards others.
True. Agreed. I think the starting point for adopting and weaving in DEI into the cultural fabric of any organization actually begins with asking the right questions and beginning with our own self-introspection. Now, what are some of the unconscious biases? Where can the organization start its DEI effort? Can it start from something as simple and yet as powerful as creating maybe more inclusive language within the organization? Right. I think we have had a very, very interesting, very fulfilling discussion. I'll for the paucity of time, since we have already crossed the 4 o'clock time mark, we'll close the discussion here. But the idea is diversity and inclusion. Let's not just look at only diversity part of it. Now, trying to fit an employee into the organizational culture and changing the hiring lens to recruit employees from diverse backgrounds, I think that's much more important. Now, if DEI can be done successfully, it can actually make both people and organizations much more successful, because this is not something we can just talk about them. This is something that we will live, we will embody, and we will become much more conscious as individuals and thus much more productive team members. Thank you so much to all the panelists and the Team HR Association of India for this wonderful platform. I'll hand it over to the Team HR Association of India. Thank you so much, all of you, once more.
Thank you so much, Pallavi.
Thank you, Pallavi, for such a great way of moderating the entire discussion.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, and thank you for taking us to this insightful session, making the session more interactive and exciting. Definitely causing for it. Thank you, Rakesh, Umesh, and Dr. Kanupriya for sharing your valuable insights. It's been definitely a privilege for having all of you all on this session today. And to all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recordings of our today's session on our YouTube link. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Before we conclude with our today's session, we would also want to thank all the association members, that is Acacia, NASSCOM COE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local, Ahmedabad, and India for supporting HRAI's event. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the link provided in the chat window. Do join us for our next Connecting the Dots session on the topic Redefining Employee Experience on the 10th of November, 2022. That's it from us today. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you
Pallavi.
very much.
Love your energy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kanupriya. You
Thank you.
made my day. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you, Umesh.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mesh. Thank you, Rakesh. Nice seeing you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, Kanupriya. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Peter and the HRI team. You guys did a lot of job at the back end for making it seamless for all of us. So thank you, Peter. Thanks, Neha, for doing all of it together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kanupriya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody, very soon. Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Shyam. We can hereby conclude with our today's session.